Arthur Fink. Okay? Yay! Arthur's background is varied. He has been a number of things in his career past. Nonviolence trainer, publicist, radio show host, organizer of spiritual retreats, and he's now a consultant and a coach focusing on organization clarity and simplifying technology and clear communications. He's a wonderful photographer specializing in dance. And as we see in his presentation, he also does a pretty good job with buildings and machinery. In fact, as a preservationist, Arthur urges us to hug old buildings as well as trees. And you'll understand more when you see his presentation. Arthur?
Thank you. Well, I have been here before, first showing some of my dance photography, then talking about interface design for a point-of-sale system. That's the before picture, not the after. Then I talked about usability, looking at the cacophony of traffic signs that made very little sense. And tonight, my subject is not Jordan Meat, it's visual passion. And how could I have an office right around the corner from Jordan Meat and not be curious what was going on inside there? It was quite a challenge to get in. I managed to get in for about 50 minutes before the demolition happened. There was no electricity, so this oven was completely dark, but I just pointed my flash and took some pictures. It wasn't what I expected. It never is. And if what we found was always what we expected, well, consultants would be out of business, and I think our artwork would be pretty dull. This is the life of a hot dog. It's a Mondrian painting, and I absolutely love it, and it brought me back to all the time I spent as a child in the Museum of Modern Art. But these aren't just pretty colors. They're telling a story of hot and cold water running in the pipes, compressed air, other gases. It's all telling a story. And the PK folks, that's how I get around the pronunciation, they asked me to talk about creative process, and mine is very simple. I just look and listen very, very carefully, and sometimes ask questions. I let go of preconceptions, and I look and listen even more carefully, and I take it in. And then I focus on my biggest surprises. What's going on here? What's going on in this conference room? Or what's the goal of this meeting? Or what are all these workers doing? And it was fascinating walking through this building. And I wished I could have gotten back. The disassembly of Jordan Meat, it started very, very carefully. As those welders are cutting some of the beams very carefully so they don't pull down the Pepper Club and the Rabelais building at the same time that they pull down Jordan Meat. They couldn't just knock it down. It was extremely delicate work, although it's done with very heavy machinery. And whether I'm seeing a visual pattern or something else, it doesn't matter. The first step is to take it in. And I became a fixture coming by there on every coffee break with my camera. And then it came, the fire. And other people took pictures of the flames leaping out of the buildings. I was struck by the thick cloud of smoke that obscured our vision. That's what I saw and felt, and so that's what I photographed. There's not very much drama working up on a ladder like this for hours and hours at a time, just spraying water. But these firefighters are our heroes and heroines. And the fire was well contained to the building that was being demolished. And we can still go to the Pepper Club or buy our books at Rabelais. It's no accident that my last photo show was called Visual Passion. Because without passion and compassion, our artwork is dead. So in my creative process, if I have feelings, I want to notice them. And if I don't notice any, I'm suspect, because usually there's something exciting. You know what's amazing? After this fire, the building was still solid. In fact, it was so solid they were using bulldozers on the second floor to continue a lot of the demolition work. And they were not a risky crew. This was a very systematic, organized process. The crew had to keep washing away all the soot so that as they continued the demolition, it didn't put a cloud of soot into the air. And mostly with those huge machines, they were sorting and sorting piles of big steel, little steel, rebar, concrete, wood. I think they sorted things more carefully than many of us sort our trash. This was lace work to me. It wasn't rebar. And it was lace work, so that's what I photographed. I teach a workshop called Photographing from Within. And that's what this is about. You feel, you look, you say, what do I feel? And let's photograph that. You know, it was refreshing to find a fire that wasn't about a tragedy, a loss of life, a family being displaced. And I could just focus on the visual patterns. We've seen so many pictures of rural poverty that almost glorify it. And I want to learn and teach, but focus on dignity and respect. I became a little boy again when I watched this machine munching on those big steel beams, cutting them into bite-sized pieces. The force was just incredible. Yes, there's a lot of brute strength in the demolition. That's the novelty, but that wasn't the real story. The real story was the delicate precision work that I saw these operators doing. And it was amazing to watch the level of control. At one point, I saw one of these machines pick up a steel beam and use it to sweep across the table like we get rid of crumbs on a table. They're two dinosaurs, you know, communing with each other. But one of them has picked up this beam, and in the next slide, you'll see it sweeping the debris off the floor in one pile so that when they crush the floor with a great big bite, it will land somewhere else. There it goes. What I saw was far from what many of us think of as demolition. And we have to be ready for surprises in all of our artistic work or consulting or coaching, our love lives, our dialogue with our God. Let's embrace the surprises. Well, I end with a picture from inside the building because I've not forgotten what was inside. And I also want to end with 2 pieces of advice. Before you photograph, look. And before you leave a lecture, ask questions. Dig deeper. Thank you very much.